Now, for decades, experts have questioned the increase in attention deficit hyperactivity disorder diagnosis among children as well as adolescents. They say the rates of diagnosis have really outstripped the estimated prevalence of the disorder itself. And there's also heated debate about the clinical treatment of ADHD, with some arguing that doctors are over-medicating patients. So the question really is, what is the best way to treat this disorder? And is cannabis oil, for example, a suitable alternative treatment option? Well, Dr. Rykie Liebenberg from the South African Society of Psychiatrists joins me now to discuss this from our Joburg studio, and as well as shortly we'll have Andy Gray joining us via Skype from Durban. But Dr. Rykie, thank you so much for joining us this evening. The question: is cannabis the better alternative, especially when we have to treat such as ADHD?
It's such a difficult question for me to answer that one, because cannabis oil, I hope you're speaking about cannabis oil and not the smoke, because cannabis oil is not well studied in ADHD. It's actually not well studied in any disorder. We've got some evidence that it might help with pain control, maybe with appetite, maybe with nausea when you're dealing with cancer patients receiving chemotherapy. In ADHD, it has not been well studied. There's no scientific evidence that it helps the symptoms of ADHD.
As well as other illnesses and other disorders as well, right?
Exactly.
But then that's going to bring me, and allow me to play devil's advocate for this one. But then that brings me to the questions around, are the studies conducted when pharmaceutical companies as well as medical health are able to regulate, are able to prescribe, and have some form of financial control over the very same alternative forms of medicine? So, because for so long as they're not under mainstream, they're alternative forms of medicine, and they not have been studied, not enough evidence is presented to support. So then my question then on the other side of it will be, is there not enough evidence to support simply because there is no way as yet of regulating this from a financial and pharmaceutical perspective, and that once that formula has been found, then all of a sudden we'll find that actually there are a wonderful array of ways of using cannabis oil to treat various symptoms?
You're a very good devil's advocate, if I must say so. You know, the pharmaceutical companies are demonized to some extent. And yes, I agree that there's financial incentives and stuff to do with studies and medication. But we do know that cannabis has adverse effects on the brain, especially the teenage brain, the developing brain.
Cannabis or cannabis oil?
Well, that we're not sure of, because they're now saying if you separate the ingredients, then the oil might not be, but we do know that cannabis, as in smoking cannabis, has a very adverse effect, especially on the teenage brain. For instance, you get a 30% increase in suicidal ideation and attempts if people have smoked cannabis before the age of 18 by the time they're young adults. That we know. We know that our brain, that is a neuroplastic organ that grows and forms new connections, that's inhibited by cannabis. And they haven't really proven that splitting the ingredients will not have the same adverse effect. It's not proven. And I hear from people that cannabis oil is extremely expensive, so there's also a financial incentive.
Well, we'll get to the bottom of this one, and I want to cross over to Andy. Andy, I mean, we're talking about alternative forms of treatment, especially for, disorders such as ADHD. But in your opinion, do you think that ADHD really has been overly prescribed in terms of, especially teenagers? Teenagers are running a racket in class, and all of a sudden you find that the teacher will suggest to take any form of ADHD treatment instead of actually just maybe even disciplining the individual.
So there's certainly some evidence of an increased incidence of ADHD if you look at the number of prescriptions that are written. Whether that is a true increase or over-prescribing is difficult to tell. It's possible that in the past we didn't diagnose those adolescents who were deserving of treatment, but you're absolutely right that the decision to start ADHD treatment should not be taken lightly, and it should be based on a full diagnosis and not certainly on the say-so of a teacher or a parent.
And then your views on cannabis oil as an alternative use of treatment, especially for ADHD. I mean, we're talking here about how perhaps we should start looking at a Health Professionals Council actually regulating this so that it is another form of treatment. And then there's the other issue around if you regulated, are pharmaceutical companies benefiting, or is it not regulated because pharmaceutical companies have not as yet discovered a way of being able to market and exhaust this phenomena?
So firstly, there's really very little difference between cannabis and cannabis oil. It's the strain of cannabis that is used for the extraction process which will determine the content of that oil. So you can grow a strain which is high in the psychoactive substance, THC, or you can grow a strain which is low THC and higher in cannabidiol, CBD, which is the non-psychoactive component. So the oils are not the same. It's not like saying cannabis has a psychoactive effect, the oil does not. That's certainly not the case at all. The evidence for the use of either cannabis or the individual cannabinoids or any preparation made from them, be that an oil or a buccal spray or capsules or any other form of dosage, is really weak. The extent to which it's been researched over the years has been patchy because of the prohibition. It's made it difficult for researchers to do that work over the years, and we do have new research which is coming out now.
And it's exactly what Dr. Rykie was actually saying there.
In epilepsy.
Yeah, well, it's exactly what Dr. Rykie was saying there around issues of research. Unfortunately, we do have to leave our conversation there for this evening. Dr. Rykie, thank you so much for joining us this evening, shedding some light in terms of the use of cannabis oils, as well as Andy Gray, who was joining us via Skype from Durban. Well, that's our show for this evening. We've got news that is up next, so do enjoy.